Hey everyone, so I want to talk about two more methods of being able to zero your tool as a kind of continuation of our previous video part one. And in this two method, we'll be talking about how to use a touch plate, what a touch plate is, and where the code is implemented in Mach 3. And a touch plate is a lot more accurate way to set the zero for your stock. And we're going to go over setting just the Z, and then we're also going to go over setting the X and the Y with a touch plate. And I touched on this subject just a little bit in a previous video on a corner finding edge plate that I was using, like this one. But I'm going to go in a little farther detail on exactly what I'm doing and where the code is implemented in Mach 3 and everything like that. So basically a touch plate is any conductive piece of metal that you can put on top of your stock that completes an electrical circuit. So that's all it is your circuit goes from your bit to your touch plate into your CNC controller, and when your touch plate connects with your tool, then it completes that circuit and tells the controller that's where the tool is, and it will subtract the thickness of your particular touch plate and set that as a 0. So a touch plate can be, like I said, any piece of metal that you have laying around. It could be a feeler gauge, something you know that, for example, this one is 18 thousandths. It could be a pre-built touch plate, such as this one. Or, you know, if you have one of these little squares, little machinist square, it can be this. It can really be any piece of metal. So, and basically all we're doing is we need one end of the wire connected to the tool, and that will connect to the tool, and then your other wire will go back to your CNC controller as an input. And so when it completes that circuit, it notifies the CNC controller and it'll stop the tool. So now, in order to use any piece of metal, all you really need to do is get out your calipers, and you just measure the thickness on where you're going to be touching off the tool. So, and for example, you know, we're going to set this here, and we're going to touch off right here. So we want to measure right here and get a thickness of what that is. And for example, if we were going to use the feeler gauge, we can get a measurement there. Of course, this it's reading 7 inches closed, so something's not right there. Okay. So, and then see, we're right at 18 thousandths, 18.5. So all we need to do is accurately measure the thickness of our feeler gauge, or our touch plate. So, and on this one, with the little step down right there, we need to actually measure right here the thickness. So, and that's 0.620. And once we do that, we can hop over into Mach 3 is what we'll be using for this example, and put that in the program, the thickness, so when the tool comes down and touches our plate, it knows that it's exactly, say, 0.620 above our material. So, and when it does the calculation, it'll touch here, then it'll subtract that amount, and it'll zero right on our stock. So let's go over to Mach 3 and show you how to put in the code in the Auto Zero Tool button to allow us to be able to do that. Alright, so we're here in Mach 3, and I just wanted to show you real quick how we can put in our touch plate code and get it to activate when we want to activate it. So we'll open up Mach 3 here, and we can go. What we want to do is, you see here this Auto Tool 0 button. This is what we want to use, or we want to push when we want it to zero the tool. So in order to implement the code, because right now, you know, if we reset it and we Auto 0 tool button, it says it's not yet implemented. So what we want to do is go up here to plugin operator, and we want to go to edit button script. So we push that, and then all the available buttons that we can reprogram will flash. And so we want to reprogram this one, the Auto Tool 0 button. So once we do that, a box will open up, and let's make this a little bit bigger here. And you can see right here, nothing is implemented in. So we can go ahead and delete that, and we can go find our code. And the codes that I have that I'll be going over, I'll put links to them in the description below. And I'm not the best at writing code, but a lot of the code that I've found is very well commented. And so we'll go through it real quick and show you what the different points mean and how you can modify it to work for your machine and your touch plate. So first code that we'll open up is a code for just doing the Z-axis. Alright, so now that we got our code open for the Z-axis, we can go through it and see what we need to change. Now basically what we're looking for is, where do we change the thickness that we measured earlier for our plate. And in this particular code, right here, it says change 0.6225 to your plate thickness, and then adjust for final accuracy. So right here, we want to go ahead and change our plate thickness that we measured. So it could be, you know, depending on your plate, it can be whatever you need. So previously we measured that big aluminum touch plate at 0.620, and so that's all we need to change. And now we're pretty much done in this particular code. So what we can do after we've changed that, we can go ahead and copy everything and copy it, and then we'll go ahead and put it right into our script editor and go to File, and we'll go to Save, and then we can close that out. And now we want to go ahead and exit Mach 3 and restart it. Okay, and once it starts back up, we can go ahead and push reset, make this a little bit bigger, and we can now push our Auto 0 tool button, and you'll see that the Z-axis starts moving down. Now I don't have a CNC connected to here, so it's just going to keep on going until it makes contact with something. But you can see that now the code works by pushing that button. So we'll go ahead and reset that, and now I'll show you how to enter the code, because that was just for doing the Z-axis. So now we'll enter a code that does for all three axes. So we'll go ahead and find that, and this code was written by Alan Massey, and I kind of modified it a little bit to work with my machine. But this code works really well for doing all three axes or just the Z-axis. So, and it's very well commented, and it will tell you every step of the way what's going on. So if you take a little bit of time and read through all the different comments, then it will pretty much tell you where you need to enter and what you need to do. So as you can see right here on plate thickness is where we entered our thickness, and for when we measure the distance from X and Y, we need to enter those values too. And I'll show you when we go into the shop where those values come from on the touch plate. So and that's basically it on this code, just to modify it a little bit to work with our machine. So we'll go ahead and again, we will copy the entire thing. We'll copy, and then we'll go back to operator, edit button script, auto zero tool. We'll highlight this, we'll delete that, and we'll paste that in. So now our new code is in here. So we'll file, we'll save that and close that, and then we'll go ahead and restart Mach 3. You have to restart it after you make any changes. Alright, so we'll reset it, and on this particular code it will give you the option or tell you to touch the bit to make sure that you always have connectivity and that everything's working properly. So when we hit the auto zero tool button, it'll tell you to briefly touch the probe to the bit and it will start counting down. So, and obviously I can't do that on this machine because I don't have a CNC hooked up to it, but I wanted to give you the basic idea of how to implement that code here in Mach 3. Now we'll go out to the shop and I'll show you in a little more detail how that works. Alright, so now we're back here in the shop, and here's, we're going to explain a little bit of how to use the touch plate with the machine and the code that we entered in Mach 3. And so we have our touch plate here, and basically we have our two leads. One gets attached to the tool and the other gets attached to the touch plate. And this goes back to our control box so Mach 3 can see it. So basically on this touch plate there's a hole right there, so we'll put this in the hole, and then we'll put our touch plate on our stock. We'll move the machine back here a little bit, and we want to put our touch plate right on the stock. And this one has a little corner find right there, so it'll just sit right there on the stock. And we'll lower our bit down to the touch plate. We'll lower it down close so we can put our clamp on there, and the clamp just goes right on there. Now we're set up to start zeroing our tool. So we'll go back over here to Mach 3 and we'll tell it, we'll push our auto tool zero button, and if you remember, it'll tell us to briefly touch the probe to the bit. So we'll go ahead and touch it to the tool, and then it'll come up with a dialog box. Do we want to do zero, the Z only? And we'll go ahead and push enter. And once we push enter, then the tool will move down and touch the touch plate and retract. So once it touches that touch plate, then it will calculate the distance from here to here from the value that we entered, and will be exactly on the bottom of the stock. If you'd like a little more in-depth on how this particular touch plate works, check out my corner finding video in the description below. But I hope this helped with showing what a touch plate is and how it operates. And if you guys have any comments or suggestions, write them below.